I am excited that we have our second podcast for Education Matters Zimbabwe Career Connect program. And I'm so excited on the guest we have today because we were at a regional event together, and almost every young person came out with a mantra or saying from him, and it was about a missing piece in the puzzle. He'll tell us more about it. I'm excited to introduce to you Mr. Tendai Carlton Saunyama. I asked him, how would you want me to introduce you? And it was so interesting. I said, he's a man of few words. He said, I'm a youth specialist and I've been doing this work since 2003. I think that says a lot, although it's short. Welcome to our podcast, Mr. Saunyama.
Thank you so much, Sibu. Yeah, you know what? As frank and as direct as you actually say that it's hard to come up with what exactly defines a person. So you see, even if you were to ask who are you, you would start thinking of who am I in what context. So the easiest for me is I've been working with young people. I also like to say I'm the oldest young people. I'm a senior youth. Yeah, so this is me reaching out and speaking and living my life to the fullest. And I think I was actually speaking to my wife some just after the regional conference, actually. And the interesting thing is she is also in education. And we were saying, and we were wondering why we still feel young. And we realized that the more we spend time with a lot of young people catching up the latest lingo, the latest music. It doesn't get us into our actual age. It keeps us back then when we were teens. And the times we always look at people and say, what does this mean? But then you realize that, no, you actually are in that league of Madaras or elders, Rudy, and you're wondering, do you mean me? And people literally have to scratch me or pat me at the back and say, I mean you. And so yeah, it's it's that. So yeah, I work with young people. I enjoy working with young people. I've been doing it since I was like I mentioned. I was a volunteer in a rural community in Nerupiri in 2003. And before that, I was even working with in an in-school club. Actually, we started an in-school club in Nyanga. It's St. Mary's Magdalene. So I've been doing young people, working with young people for quite some time. Am I gone with an introduction, eh? Now
Wow.
I'm no longer a man of few people of few words.
No, I really love that because we want context, right? We want to know who are we talking
Yeah,
to. And
true.
it's so amazing tonight that you talked about identity and how the question is really who am I in different
Mm,
contexts? We are really diverse people. I see
right.
that myself in myself a lot because even on my different social medias, I want different circles because I know I'm different people in different contexts. So I really like
Yeah.
that. And I really like what you're talking about, the conversation with your wife and talking about how you feel youthful. I think that's the right thing, even for our mental health. And guess
Yeah.
what? Today we are talking about mental health and not just mental health. I like the word mental health. It says mental health. Maybe so for women,
Wow,
huh?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited
Mental
that
health. Yeah, that's nice.
yeah, I'm excited that today we are talking about men's mental health. And we're going to
Okay.
talk about it in general, but
Mm,
specifically, we'll also really touch on men's mental health when men come back from the diaspora back to
mm,
Zimbabwe, Africa, or, like when they come back to the third world. We're talking about that in
mm.
context as well. So I'm so excited, so excited to have you today, Mr. Saunyama. Shall we just, jump into our questions?
Oh yeah, sure. Please, yeah, shoot.
All right, awesome. So my first question is very general, Mr. Sawanyama. And to give it context, men's mental health is very topical globally right now. And a lot of people
Hmm.
think that, even with suicide rates that seem to be going up for men, Research actually shows that this has been happening for the last 60 to 80 years. It's just been that people don't talk about it. There's this idea of, oh, men have so much privilege, the patriarchal society, in a way that,
Mm.
men's issues are not being, talked about as much as they should be. And in Zimbabwe, let's be honest, I think we have that suicide rates going up. We see this in the newspapers all the time. And yeah, something worth discussing, even in the context of people coming back from the diaspora. So my first question, Mr. Saunyama, is what are the biggest mental health challenges men face in Zimbabwe today? So pretty general.
Well, it's interesting from the onset, things have started off as me just not finding in one straightforward response. And I think it also touches when we're looking at mental health, where we literally have a lot of factors that come in and that are hitting us as men. Where the factors where we just the environment, that we grow up in, the environment that our expectations as just a person, as a people, expectations from our friends, expectations from our families, just definition of men. When men are just spoken of, it's about masculine roles, expectations, things that are supposed to be done naturally. I'm always just yesterday. I had a guy who was assisting me set up a garden fence. So we're talking about issues. So you constantly would refer to how he grew up whilst he was kumusha, and he's throwing in my terms that are usually there. And so when he said something, and it doesn't help that he comes from Benga, and there's also dialect issues, and what he would say is this, it would not be something I would say as a Manyika.
Okay.
So he says to me, mdara munenge musina mbobvira mambokura umusha imimi. Musina mbobvira magara umusha. Zvinenge zvisiri ku, it's such statements and such contextualization and connotations that then pull you down and say, oops, I might not necessarily be man enough, because someone, yeah, it's something where if you are not able to do, I can openly say anambovira ndafudza mombe, because kumusha kwedu akutorina mombe. So it took me to pains to actually try and explain to him that, you know what, kumusha kwedu hakuna mombe. So even it's not in a household thing, it's actually like our area haina mombe because makomo. But we do gardening, I can do that. But for him, it didn't, gardening, my guy, it's not something that I can associate with men. So it's that, what the beliefs, the things that society attaches and defines male, and then the roles that we need to play. And it doesn't help that we are in a changing environment where we now have issues like economies, where you go to school, you go and get qualifications, and you expect you're going to come back, you're going to fend for your family, and you're going to do things, and those things don't happen. And there's someone who just looks up to you because you're a father. So, or you are a firstborn, or you are the male, you are the boy within a family that has girls, and they're saying, Pandemika Baba, stuff like that. It's the pressure. That pressure tends to, first time it comes, you let it go. Second time it comes, you let it go. But when it constantly comes, you start questioning yourselves. What really am I? Even when you're contributing something from another end, there are things that you're supposed to do wholesomely because you're male. So it's for me, it's the pressure that come with the environment, and it doesn't help for you to, that I'm not expected to then say, Sha, hey, my day has been bad. Then people look at you and say, are you okay? Or even when you're talking stories with the guys, and you want to get a little bit intimate, people will stop and actually stare at you and say, what did I do? You just man up, and things just move on. So yeah, there's no straightforward answer to what is the biggest challenge for me. But I think there are greater factors that are influencing. And right now, I think the most challenging thing is economy. It's Mara is I might be getting $100, I might be getting $30, but there are a lot of things that I'm expected to do with that $100, and I'm failing. And there's just the pressure. You go to Mana, or a friend or even a girlfriend says, "Sha, ndiboka Maria kudai so and you can't provide," then akuenda uko watotorerwa girlfriend yako watosara usina chinhu wanzi hamfesa hauna mota hauna mari saka you want that on its
Hauna
own yakutokuratidza
mota,
kuti
hauna cash.
hauna cash.
Wanga.
You uramba uchiratidzwa the wanganess in you every day, so you slowly deplete in terms of even self-confidence. Even when we talk of trying to build self-confidence in young people, there are things, this is now beyond just sitting in a classroom in a session and doing, support systems. You need to even do bigger things that create a layer and a web of support when it comes to mental health. Yeah.
Wow. Wow, Mr.
Yeah.
Saunyama, so much depth, so much depth. And I really liked your personal story on yesterday when you were putting up the fence, something really that we would see in Zimbabwean circle, very manly, we let the men do the physical work, right? And
Mm.
then you have a conversation with another man and you're talking and he's saying you're not man enough, if we can say that in few words, right? And I
Yeah.
really like that because I've never thought of, I think it's there, but I've never thought of it. We usually think of like even exclusion. I'm come from an exclusion background. Masters in social
Mm.
exclusion was my most recent. And you usually think of when you're in the urban, the cities, the towns, these people exclude the people in the rural areas in terms of narratives
Mm.
or how we describe people, talk about people. But then it's actually quite interesting that it's also the other way around. We have folk from who have grown up in the rural areas saying, urban guys, you guys are not men enough, you know. And yeah, I take that as something quite interesting, but it's quite interesting. Men are going through rough times, we should say. And part of it is also
Mm.
really, there are more opportunities for women right now. Even when it comes to
Mhm.
jobs, there's always the affirmative action, women are highly encouraged to apply for this. And yeah, sometimes women are earning even more. And when you think about it, even in the city, sometimes you really think about, let's say, even in a household setup, there's a lot of work that
Mhm.
women can do traditionally. Um,
Mm.
like the cooking, cleaning the house, things like that. But the traditional roles that men used to do back in the day, let's say our parents, when they were in the rurals, if they live in the rurals, not so much. I like that you were putting up a fence and gardening, but that's if people have space to do that. If you are
Yeah.
renting a lodger, what are the manly things that you do? If you don't adjust to really redefining what it is to be a man in today's society. So I really like
Mhm.
that. Thank you so much for that context. So I have a question, Mr. Saunyama, and my
Mhm.
question is, so why do you think so many men then struggle to open up when they're going through stuff? I've seen males in my own life like really struggle to open up when they're
Mhm.
going through stuff. So why do people struggle in Zimbabwe, to be specific, in Africa, if you like, for example? Yeah.
It's it starts from that expectation, how you're raised, and how your role models, those people that surrounded you, what did you see? There are other peers my age who openly speak, and some who don't. But And it's unfortunate that at this point in time, there is now talk of we are raising weak boys.
Mm.
We are raising, the men of this era are weak. But I actually think there are a lot of, even including myself, there's a lot of weakness in us, those that were raised and told to be firm. Because really, if we were raised to
Because
be
you can't
firm,
cry, so you're weak.
you can't cry, you can't let it out, and it's really affecting a lot of guys because you don't know when to say, guys, can you help me?
Mm. Which you
Uh,
should.
which it should. It's so unfortunate that in my lifetime, I've lost directly, a friend due to suicide,
Mm.
and we were young. I think we were what, 16, 17, 16, I'm not sure, but it was back then. But yes, we can just say, it's a weakness, he's a coward, but there are a lot of things that a lot of males are doing right now, for example, because you can't deal with the reality in your house
Mm.
that you can't provide for food, then you find it as an excuse to go and create another house, another, it could be a concubine or somewhere where
Small
you
house.
relieve your stress, your small house, where you're saying you relieve your stress, because that is your way of dealing with problems. We run away from men. Don't necessarily deal with problems. We run away from situations
Mm.
that we can't do. We just go and find the easiest and softest place where we are not constantly reminded,
Mm.
instead of us facing and saying, you know what, at this particular point in time, I'm one. And
Mm.
I've got no situation, I've got no solution for this problem. So if we are now looking at a marital point of view where we're saying, if then the wife then decides, okay, since Jagadaro, since you're not giving me, then it's fine.
Mm.
But if you then say, but it's, I think we've got different versions of weakness.
Mm.
We have, boys that are weak. We have fathers that are also weak in that they cannot express and is toughen up their children to even deal with this situation. And we don't even know how to adjust and move on to
Mm.
not being able to fend, not being able to man up and meet up the current expectations. And I think the challenge is also because, again, I'm saying we run away from situations. So right now our issue is abafana mazuva vakadhakwa,
Mm.
vakapusa, havasi strong. We've
Mm.
already shifted the blame to these young people who are younger than us, but we're not looking at how isusu we are also young. We cannot, our silence is fear of being judged,
Mm.
fear of not being who we say we are.
Mm.
Because there are a lot of people whom I know personally at times, and I when we are amongst guys and boys, and even when you see these kids, they're acting out to be different people.
Mm.
When you visit them in their own homes, then you wonder, wow, is that guy who was there? So it's that issue where we don't want asida kushorwa, asida kutarisirwa pasi. We want to maintain our
Mm.
statuses. There are
Mm.
bosses who I always laugh at how other people say, ukaona a male boss, anoshungurudza vanhu zvisingaiti. Mfesi kudhena hatorina kana power. So panapa ndo
Exactly.
hatorina
People say that a
power
lot.
because it is structural, it's structural power. This is how males do. They do sort of like a referral, manhood somewhere else. But panova hangar with the men, they are not because they fear being judged. They fear not speaking up. I've been judged. I know I'm judged because I always say, I can't go home and and then again, I get assistance. So people always say you have got overshare. You're sharing too much to anyone. I can even talk to anyone who listens because at that point I feel this will keep me going on. But it's not something that is common. And it's not something that, I think I say it because of my environment and background and seeing how it affects a lot of people not to speak. So it comes to me naturally. But so even within my same circle, family and all, not hey, one because my brother is not speaking,
Mm.
my father is not speaking,
Mm.
and because my father doesn't want to speak kwandiri because vari kuti hey, ndingazotaurirawo mwana wangu nhamo dzangu here hazviiti.
Mm.
But you see, the health ya baba wako is deteriorating because you
Mm.
realize that no, he can't cope. And the easiest thing is, mwana wangu, chimbondipawo apa umbondibaila out.
Mm.
And so we maintain secrecy because we just want to maintain our pride, certain power. Ndopane power yedu yekuita mufese kunzi uri murume, there is that having things under control. And ukaradza vulnerability manje, watoenda
Mm.
hausisina idzi dzinongotaura dzinongochema chema idzi even people don't come to you because they say hapana chaanokupa because it's ever in whining mode.
Wow, that is so, so deep, so deep. And I think a word that comes to mind is the toxicity of masculinity. That
Mm,
sometimes these labels that we've put and expectations of what it is to be a man become very toxic for men
mm,
It's important. For example, I was listening to a podcast on mental health for men as well. I really loved it. They said something that really resonated with me to say, while males may think that you should provide financially, I mean, women are doing so great. Sometimes what it is that
Mhm.
women want to be provided for at the moment may also be just emotional, being provided for emotionally, being there for them, because you may then both fail to provide financially but also then fail to really meet their emotional needs. Maybe what they want is more support to achieve their dreams, things like that. So yeah, it's just quite interesting what you're talking about. Mr. Saunyama, I see that for recording, we have 7 minutes left. We may have to do a second session on this. So
Yes,
I'm
fine.
going to jump to a question that I think will kind of round up certain things and put us in context for people coming back, right? Because I think that's very essential. So the
Mhm.
question would be, Mr. Saunyama, you know, um, in the past, there was an article that out in the newspaper. A man who had been living in the diaspora was being hidden by his mom in Zimbabwe and
Mhm.
being fed, while he was in hiding. And it came out in the open. And it really showed a huge problem in Zimbabwean society where when people come back from the diaspora, there's expectation of what people should be like, how people should live, the type of jobs, the type of cars that they should be driving, and gives so much pressure to the family members of the people, but also really to the person. And
Mhm.
yeah, it makes me really think. Let's talk to someone, a male person who wants to come back from the diaspora right now. And, things are not perfect. They shouldn't be. Who said you should be driving a big car or something? What do you think?
Mhm.
Both from society end, but also for the person. And for this particular session, this will be our last question. So I'll really allow you to speak. So for the society, Zimbabwe, what should you do for the person, for their mental health?
Um, it's it's important. I say, unfortunately, it's not as easy to stay out of lives, Zelan.
Mm,
It then doesn't make us who we are.
mm,
We are a community ukuthi unzwisisa ukuthi kwadzokera je ko angari sei ikoko,
mm,
and maybe because taiona mapicture or tainzwa kuti akaenda kudiaspora, then we want to anticipate that they've made it and they're coming back with the investment.
mm.
It is really important at times not to. There's some questions that come naturally. I think as a people, we just ask some questions that necessarily shouldn't be asked. Like, how are you? I mean, say, wakadzoka rini? Urikuitei? Stuff like that. For us,
Wakadzokererei.
wakadzokerei,
Why did you come back?
especially, especially it comes from caring and it. But we are now at a point where we just don't want to. If you're not within that closed circle, yes, family friend, and don't ask some questions.
Please.
Hi, it's Bo. You wadzoka? It's nice and it. If they want to then go on vachitaura nyaya dzavo, then
Yes.
it's fine. But
Yes.
don't probe like you are in an interview. Don't inquisitive. Right. So what's next? Next question. Okay, Saka wakadzoka. Okay, what did you come back with? Did you come back with the family? Where are you staying? Are you, no, they might not even want to, to share such information. So don't be so inquisitive. As much as it is caring, and we say it's caring and loving the community, yes, I understand. But times are also changing for such questions. Don't go there. Um, and it's hard because again, when we're not living in openness and we're living in the community and we try and portray kuti, my son, my daughter, or my children, or our father is in the diaspora and is coming back, we then, because we want to fit into what is happening already, "Vantumira mari," and when they eventually come back, things are so different and so detached, and it's not easy to come back. Trust me,
It's not.
it's not easy to come back into Zim, and you think things will flow.
Mm.
Zim, ikakukusheka kainoita so kekuti but I think at times it could be easy to go outside because and it depends also on the length you're going outside, because isusu patinomboita tuma 1 week or tuma 2 days 3 days unonga tonakidzwa nezviri kuitika ikoko,
Yes.
and you might even spend, because it's like, wow, okay, these systems work. It's easy to access them. But when I start my sessions, Kajinja, I talk about me and my assets. When you know yourself, you need to understand who you are internally and who you are externally. The external is your support systems, your people, and socializer. Now, who do you want to keep close so that they keep the internal burning? and keep you going. Those that you are easily vulnerable to and who you share your in-depths. Our families, anana mai, anababa siblings tend to send out a picture because Varuti, we've made it out. And so we're seeing you come back and you are showing good, no, you didn't make it. It's always hard for people to then admit kuti zvina kuita or kuti kumwana wenyu akazobuda kare imba yenyu haisati yachinja nei. And then they come back and then waunonzi hauna mningi akaenda kwaakaenda akatovakira mai vake chakadai agadzira chakadai. So these pressures fall so hard, and when you come back and you see kuti bed that you were sleeping some years ago ndo yawangodzoka koorarira iyoyo because haunakwanisa kuita make enough today. So it falls under and I feel at times say it far-fetched, but I feel there might be need for actually counseling for my retainees, diaspora. If anyone wants to create those support groups, and people start sharing their experiences and how it was just reintegrating. It's like more like reintegrating into Zimbabwe. How easy is it going to be, and stuff like that. Zim, it works so well. What could be done? I think it's just the openness. I don't think they need to be some rocket scientist or formulas that we need to. Ngatingotaura zvatiri chokwadi chedu as vanhu. Way before things became commercialized, we really were open to each other. We discussed. We never created these images. Yepa Instagram, yepa Facebook, yepa LinkedIn, yepa status, yepa WhatsApp. Ndo parikutangira the pressure yacho, and what we then share kunavanhu. How would I say it's hard because back then people used to not share what they're doing in diaspora when they're doing care work, but now it's become the buzz craft, ndorato basa, so people are no longer ashamed. But zvinozoita saka wazodzoka kuti wakaenda koita care work makore esa and you didn't do anything kumba kunoko. But pamwe yanga istori your objective yako. Your objective wasn't to come back and do stuff kumba. You wanted to just go outside. And so really, you don't need to be pressurized in a society, but just know who you are, what you want to do, and create this big facet. And don't let people determine. Yes, society and people will determine who you are and how you relate, but try to be strong. It's about that mental resilience. You have to ignore and block.
Resilience. So, Mr. Sonyama, we are going to continue this in the second session. We want to talk more about coping strategies. But for now, let's just say it has been awesome, super, super awesome to be with a youth expert, advocate. Can we also say mental health specialist, especially for men? Yes, really, really awesome, Mr. Sonyama. And I want to do a second session with you so we can tell people more. My name is Sibusisi Mkokomi. I'm the Careers Associate at Education Matters. I am excited to bring Education Matters podcast for the Zimbabwe Career Connect. We're excited for the work that we do to support especially young people, middle-aged people who have studied abroad and want to come back to Zimbabwe to live, work in Zimbabwe or in Africa. I'm excited that today we get to host Mr. Tendai Carlton Saunyama. We had him in the first session on mental health for men. And yes, we continue with the same conversation because there was so much depth to it, so much that we could talk about. And we would love to share a little bit more. And now talking about coping and resilience, as well as entrepreneurship, money, and mental health. And I like to say it as this way, mental health. Maybe not really for women, huh? I'm joking. Mental health is for everybody, but I really like that word pun. Welcome to our second session host, Mr. Tendai Carlton Saunyama. He loves to say that he is simply a youth activist, youth change maker, and that he's been doing this work since 2003. Welcome again to our podcast.
Thank you, Sibu. Thank you. It's great actually to be back and getting into, the depth of what we were sharing. But I might not be the depth, but just the surface of what we hope to people to grasp and start thinking about and talking about it. So this is where we would want to take things. So we just ignite that flame where at home, we say, either someone says, or someone is, this guy is okay. But just that acknowledgement in what I'm saying as true or not true builds on us starting to talk about and actually having men to tell and to talk health. If I would want to borrow and twist mental health.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. But I want to don't know what with depth.
No,
So
it's
now we
perfectly
have to
fine.
have a whole conversation on surface and depth. All right, but I get you. You're saying,
Perfectly fine.
there's so much depth to issues of mental health. Sometimes,
Yeah,
we
true.
really still on the surface, and I totally
Mm,
agree. So, all right, let's jumpstart to our first question, which would be on, coping and resilience. So, last time
mm,
the last question we talked about was, you know, we had that issue. A man came out in the newspapers a few years back. His mom had been
mhm,
hiding him, feeding him in hiding, and he
mm,
had been in the diaspora, and the mom would still keep the narrative that he's still in the diaspora. And we talked about how
mm,
Zimbabwean society, it's quite hard on people who come back from the diaspora. And especially you come
mhm,
back, you don't have a big house, you don't have a big car, things like that. And we had that whole conversation. Feel free to also expand on that. And also, as we move on to saying, from your own experience, what has helped you cope during tough times, especially when you felt under pressure? So feel free to,
mhm.
start from that last conversation, but also moving into this question.
Thanks. I'll just go straight into saying that so many things happen in our different lives. But when we come up with things that want to respond and assist, we tend to create umbrella responses for people.
Mm,
We even discuss this when we're talking about youth or when we're even talking about trainings, where when we're seated and we are giving training content, we're passing on training content, we are giving hypothetical, things, and instead of facilitating, it so happens that even when we would want to respond, let's say to this gentleman who stayed in the diaspora, comes back to Zim, faces challenges, uh, anyone who would want to deal or get them into a program, they will get them into the general, program and not the one that is specific to him, to his issues, to what
mm,
really triggered those
mm,
problems.
mm,
So that when you're responding, you are wholesomely responding and assisting an individual. We don't have safe spaces, like I mentioned, issues to do with support groups, where they are there, but they're not really pronounced, they're not systematic.
mm,
But we have support groups that have always been part of us, but we have tended to just discard anything that is very much a Zimbabwean, if I would want to say,
mm,
or Ubuntu
mm,
concept when we are talking of. So back in the years, I was part of a team that was running an intervention in the Guides Shiri,
mm,
where it was a project where it wanted to try to reduce my incidences of early teen pregnancies and new HIV infections and
mm,
STIs in adolescent girls.
mm,
But the main thing that we're driving back then was Nyaya Kuti, we have done away with the Tete concept. Our aunts
mm,
who would be the backbone and someone who sits and molds you, someone you could go to and actually share your problems and be safe
mm,
when your problems have been shared. These things have made us those. We have the usual church groups, men's fellowships, women fellowships, the teens, the youths. These are already, systematic structures that have been built and have come by virtue of where we stay. But
mm,
we tend, because of what has happened and what has transformed and how people have changed and how people don't even understand their roles that they're supposed to be playing within the cultural and societal context, we have even made life even harder where people don't even know where to go if
mm,
they needed or help. For Zimbabwe, okay, fine, we don't have those support groups that exist in other countries at the rate that we would want them to be at community level, rate level, village level, district level. We don't have those things happening. But what we're saying, we have cultural systems that would actually be helping. But these are the ones that have made us feel so inferior that we created stories where we say we've made it when we haven't made it. My son is doing this, so you've already shunned that support system. We are living as individuals. We don't know where to and who to turn to. So it's hard. I'm not sure if, name dropping would be good, but there's Friendship Bench in Zimbabwe who have been doing so much in trying to address mental health in the rate and level and that they've been pushing to do it is what people just need to grasp and do away with the fear that I can't be seen going there. At some point, I was referred to. I had gone to say medical doctor, and when I was with this doctor, he says, "Do you know what? What you are feeling, what is causing the headaches and all these challenges has got nothing to do with what is wrong with your physical body. It's actually more to do with the mental. But what you need to do is you need, number one, to just work a little bit on your health, on your weight. And then number two, you also need to go and see a psychologist." It's unfortunate that because there was no resident psychologist in my hometown, Mtare, at that particular point, I couldn't, go. But there's a point in time, some years back, I think it was just after 2010, in between, my doctor actually had to prescribe antidepressant tablets. Then I didn't know, but he was actually telling me, you're going through this, and he gave you antidepressant. I was saying, oh, wow, this is interesting, blah, 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 blah. And then later on, realized that there was a lot that was happening, but I didn't feel there was safe environment to share. But from that point on, when I realized that I can't then make these tablets part of my life, I started changing. Letting out things that I feel do not work well in my mind, not living a fictitious life. Or if things are not well, I will tell you things are not well financially, I'll tell you things are not well socially. These are the challenges that most young people and individuals and families are falling prey to because they don't want to own up and, I can't say men up, but just step up to say and own that they are in a crisis and they need help. They don't want to be seen or associated with anything that shows that you're talking to anyone. But I have lived, like cat.
Yeah, you do have a
Uh,
cat.
well, so we could get along. Actually, my totem is a python, so Trera
Oh,
Shato. So,
okay.
but I don't know how cats and snakes would relate. But anyway, we're more like food to them. But
I know, right? But I learned to love cats. I wasn't always a fan.
so so what then happens is, Kuti, these are the challenges. You can't really then say you have a solution, but you are flagging it also. I referred, um, there's a friend, like, but she's like what? I could say a sister, like a family friend, and comes to me and says, I've got a problem. And when I have a problem, I felt that what she is sharing is something that I can't really assist her with. So I referred her to a counselor who's professional. Do you know, she came back to me and she said, you know what, I went to the counselor that you referred me to, but this guy was actually judging me, was telling me why are you doing this at this particular age? Who are you to be doing stuff like this at this particular age? So
Wow.
this then creates those non-existent safe spaces
Mm, mm,
for for people. So up to now, she managed to get herself out of what was a challenge.
mm,
Up to now, she doesn't feel that she would want to go to a counselor or
mm,
anyone
mm,
who would give her husband. She doesn't believe. But now I'm happy that when Friendship Bench emerged, she also was going through something. I also then said, try Friendship Bench,
mm.
and I had I know someone who works there, had to ask them if they could actually, get them to the office. After that, then she referred the person to the other, counselors within the team. That's how she managed to actually go back. But I'm saying she is one person out of so many who managed to come back and
Wow.
say, can I, and again, I'm facing problems. Do you mind? But there are a lot of people who would have encountered judgment when
Mm.
they share their problems, who might
Yes.
have heard their stories being shared as weapons. Do you know there's instances, even with families, where
Mm.
you openly share your story, or you are so vulnerable. And then the next thing, when something happens, you hear your story being referred.
Okay, Mr. Sawanyama, you were talking about your own experience coping with tough times and when you felt under pressure, and you were talking about, yeah, friendship bench as well.
Yeah. So yeah, like I was mentioning, how they have managed to set up something that is relatable, something that is easy. They use my grandmothers,
Mm.
Um, anana mbuya vedu tichivaona, they create that safeness, that
Yeah.
safety net. You
Mm.
feel kuti pandiri kutaura nyaya yangu panapa, I'll get such wisdom. But there's always the important thing, not linking it hangu to friendship bench, is it is important when you do these things for us as people vari kureceiva nyaya dzevanhu, not to
Mm.
use that information against them
Mm.
or for favor to the next person, especially in families, especially in society, and people
Mm.
just loosely share kuti ko uyu ndiye akazombodai dai dai aitondiudza rimwe zuva kuti zvakadai. So
Mm.
that then creates this cocooning and keeping things to ourselves. We don't then feel as if we need to share anything,
Mm.
because if I share, then munhu wese akutondijaja ndisingatozita kundijaja.
Exactly.
So for me, it has been, but for me, I think I've been at such a point yekuti when you see me share something, handina basa nekuti chichazvotaurika kupi,
All
and
right.
then I just share.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my own coping mechanism. But
Mm-hmm.
if, for instance, I always share the most things with those that I feel will not divulge any information. And if they do divulge, it is in my best interest. So this is what I tell myself. No,
Mm-hmm.
it is in my best interest. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why I say it so, but azotaura because it was in my best interest. And
Wow.
again, that helps me cope. It is, I don't want to like togona kuiti ndo inonzi mental gymnastics
Mm.
yekuti you constantly need to be evaluating, telling yourself, calming yourself down, shooting up, and it's a hard process
Mm.
being constant when you're talking of things that have to do with emotion and mental,
Oh,
because
yes.
they're also changing and feeling differently. You literally be unhuman kuti usange uchifila the change yekuti
Mm-hmm.
you can constantly be in the right space, right time, doing right things.
Mm.
So in the programs that I even support, now touching on issues to do with finance and stuff, they have, the ISOs, the income savings and lending groups,
Yes.
and Amkando,
Mm.
where it's no longer about kuisamari.
Mm-hmm.
It's now about, as you're doing those, you're doing it with people who you feel more safe
Mm.
around.
Mm-hmm.
Pamunotambidzana mari, you're sharing some close to intimate problems,
Yes.
intimate issues, and
Mm-hmm.
you get counsel amongst your groups. Vakutomashandisa as places where you can discuss. Even churches would have these, but now there's that touch, yeah, spirituality
Mm.
in it. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong about Christianity and being Christian or spiritual, depending on which spirit one would want to align themselves to. When I come with a problem, it is not a solution to quote the Bible, Kwandiri,
Mm.
because it's not necessarily good in those. So people just feel, no, rega unaona nyaya yakaitwa na Jeremiah or yakaitwa na Mary or yakaitwa na these things.
Mm.
It's not always a solution.
Mm.
You're already making them feel whoever we are share issue more inferior.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, because now, if you then quote something or relate, zvakaitwa naningi, moving away, at times these things kind of create that judgment realm about the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
For me, uh, again, it's always when I would share a problem, someone's like, no, don't worry, so they pick something or some reference and GG. Because at that point, what will get me out of this situation is not necessarily what you're quoting.
Mm-hmm.
Kana itori financial issue ndipe mari ndibude and it
Mm-hmm.
or find means to calm someone down and
Mm-hmm.
not get them going. So you also need to judge and weigh how people are sharing with you these issues. And it just takes me by issue kuti there's no one size fits all when we want to assist these individuals who come back after years in the diaspora, achiedza kuona kuti thinking that life will continue from where they left off, or they will easily integrate into the day-to-day activities dzepamba, and things will wear out because the excitement will die down. Yekukuona and chichi, and people will start saying, okay, now let's start pulling weight. And they start pulling weight, this is what then hits people, and you start feeling lost, ashamed, unsure. It even pushes you so further away from Anessa, which is what are the next steps? What should I be doing right now? And who should I be joining? Your friends who you would want to easily then form support groups now have moved on. I was chatting with my friend. He's now based outside, but I'm still in Zim. He says to me, guys, we're hitting 40, man. Tatoma 40s, and we are now hitting 50. Saka paunodzoka tomboita chei, tombogara pabridge. My guy, pabridge racho pachagarika here muhood, tine chimbotaura dzei tichiita nezvei. So you come back and you'd want to continue chilling. But rutoona kuti mafesi atori nelife yawo handiti ane pamwe pachazodzoka kugara pabridge ka it's just for about 2-3 minutes, and maybe bridge racho ratona vamwe vafana vakutogarawo pabridge ipapapa. Saka and vakuti who's this bali vari kuuya saka togara makuru vanhu vari, stuff like that. Autoshaya muda kukwana papi, but this is then people then resort to finding comfort in taking something to just ease the mind, take them out of what is stressing them. They take one thing, okay, ndambostika or ndazombodai, so it's fine. So there are a lot of things, and it's unfortunate vanhu then come and say, ungatoenda komwira something chakadai so kanhu kadiki diki kudai so. It's small to you, but it's not small we need to stop quantifying issues. Yeah, why are you saying kanyaya aka ndokangangokushungurudza? And other people say it loosely, and this happens. I remember going to my elder brother's local issue karundishupa like really ndatogumirwa anditi ndidori papoint paipe kuti ndiri pabreak point otonditi mvana kanyaya aka ndokangakunetsa handitomboita zvandiri kuita kutogara mumota handiti wotogariswa paipe makwende. I'm not talking of things that are happening ndiri some 20 or like right now, a month or so, 2 months, a year, handiti ndakura zvandaita kudai so. Nditori neissue yandoda kushaya kwamuri plus, but muri tonditi no chimbomira kanyaya kakwaka haina kana dhiri. Then toenda kwatinoenda, we do what you wanted to do after what we were supposed to do. Wotodzoka paipe, and that issue was never resolved because and I need to go back and start thinking, I didn't solve that problem. Because people don't know how and when to read my cues in people. Because again, as men, we're not programmed to pick kutarisa for that emotion or variation in how tinozoona zvinhu when things are really crunch time. Saka ndomufesa paizoratidza kuti ari kunetsekana nechakadai so had I known. Paakanditi ndipoka $2 kana nditumiro $3 ndotenga nyama ndobhadhara magetsi. Had I known. But we're always preoccupied with amayas. Haangazombosviki pakushayiwa $2. Haangazomboshayiwi pakushayika $1. Tiri mafesi he will grind wangwavhangwa. Munhu mufesi unofanira wangwara. There's a point in time in our life we literally would stay pekuti taiti tatenga chingwa, and we always laugh nenyaya namadam when we were speaking with other couples. Waiti mukaita visit of what hey chingwa, patuti chingwa panapa chinotodyiwa ndechevana achienda kupi, achienda
Chikoro.
kuchikoro. Handiti isusu
Mm.
panapa iwo idya leftover whatever chasara from the previous night ndo
Mm.
chinodyiwa navanhu vakuru. As long as you're not going to school, you need to be concentrating on sadza and leftovers. Don't concentrate on chingwa ndechevana varoenda kupi kuchikoro.
Mm.
It's funny uri kutaura now and you're out of it, but no one in that particular time would believe ndosha chimbondionawo. People would say, "Ah, tora mota kaite mshika-shika." Eh,
Mm.
I, I would do that, but hazvisi mandiri, you know.
Mm.
But someone would then go and say, saka zvazvakupuresa. Kana zvakupuresa, uchanyatsofamba ugoenda kudai so. And half the time unogona kutohitwa mari dzacho dzaunenge waenda kuita chakadai so. And back then it was interesting because we would, and it's fortunate that you'd have parents and the Bollywood kune mbambaira kumunda and you get mbambaira idzi and it 50 kg wotoisa mbambaira, then you start living off those things. And unotoziva mbambaira inogara, you start understanding how kuisa mbambaira mumavhu or paground to prolong them, and they'll even taste better
Mm.
later on. But these
Yeah.
are things that we discuss, and even when we share and you'd want to be as vulnerable as that, no one would want kunzwisisa and to say, okay, I understand where you're coming from,
Mm.
and give you that solution, you know. So
Wow.
it's the societal things that we create dzinoita kuti tisatomboda kutozombobvira tabuda mu what we create and how people see us.
Mm.
And again, it is when I then go out, ukanoona ndichifamba kudai so wotoona kuti nowadays when I drive, I don't even hoot.
Mm.
Kune munhu anenge arikufamba, I literally put my hazards angu and stop, but
Mm.
then try and ensure kuti the other motorists see kuti pane munhu pane something changozoitika pamberi pangu, because there are a lot of people who are moving but they are not in their bodies.
Mm.
Ungozoita kana munhu aridzirwa kuti avhunduka, paari kuvhunduka they are snapping out, ari kupinda mune
Mm.
imwe mota kudai so.
Mm.
But it's hard. I was seeing someone in office, average, middle-aged man sleeping in town. That is so, but no, it's, the process is, akatomirira kuti ndichaona craft.
Mm.
So these are things that then people, and even munhu auya uko, abva diaspora apinda muno, it's not
Mm.
as easy for them
Mm.
to then adjust to these things, because uko pamwe zvinhu pazvaipuresa, you still could, get mari yemagetsi,
Mm.
gas,
Mm.
food, coupons that you use,
Mm.
stuff like you can afford a meal. But munomu, kana zvakatopuresa unogona kutoshayiwa dollar racho rekuti utope magetsi.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow, I really like what you shared, Mr. Sawanyama. I want to comment on a few points. You spoke about how at some point you went to get medical help, and then the doctor was like, "No, this is not a medical issue." I had the same experience earlier this year.
Oh, wow.
Juggling, work. Last year, at some point, I did two jobs, but earlier this year, I was only doing one job. But it was
Mhm.
hectic, as Finland, super cold, minus 20 degrees, working outside, fundraising. And when you do fundraising job, unenge uchiita rejections, you ask people, people are rejecting you. And I think I'm a tough person. I don't think that was hitting me the most, but I went to a doctor and I was not feeling well. And then they tell me, no, this is not physical. Testing everything, this is not physical. And they gave it a term called somatization, where literally your body get sick because you're having mental health issues, and I was really in denial. I think the only time I really understood it is when I was in Zim with my family, and I'm feeling just fine. Nothing has changed. I'm just back home, and I'm with my husband and daughter, and literally overnight, and I'm not sick anymore. Then I said that doctor was right. What I was experiencing was, a mental health issue now showing up in my body. And it's really, really
Wow.
important for people to, accept with maybe this is what they're going through and not be in denial like I was. And
Mhm.
yeah, I really love, yeah, really, really, really love that. And as we're talking, I'm really thinking, gosh, there's so much to think about. And speaking of people who've been in the diaspora, so I like entrepreneurship, and nyazi, if that's how we say it in Shona. I will sell. So
Mhm.
usually, when I was in Zim, I was there, paged pamba pedu, nima second hand ndichitengesa. And
Mhm.
I do think that in my mind, it doesn't affect me. I don't care. But ndekugara ndichifunga kuti okay vanhu vanenge vachiti kwaaribva kunze kwenyika kamunhu uyu atengesa mabhero ari kushaya here, what kind of, and those are things that people
Yeah.
experience when they come back home, that people will
Mhm.
say, will question even the type of entrepreneurial work that you would choose
Such
to
a
get
thing.
into. Because,
Mm.
of course you choose what you have access to. In I'm like, I have the second-hand stuff to sell. I love selling. Pekutengesera ndinapo. I have people actually to sit with and talk to, and I got good money from selling. And inini
Mhm.
nyadzi zero, Mr. Sawanyama. Even Mukombi, I'll be selling my stuff everywhere.
Make my
I
points up in.
sorry.
I'm saying just getting those points could pinda,
Yeah, why not? And that's where the people are, right? Like, and
Mhm.
it's not like ukutengesa only. I also have, I'm going to work, so then time yacho yaunayo anti ndopa unokwira kombi ndopa Sunday yaunengori pamboenda kupagate. So yeah, I think it's really like, for me it's being yourself, but also I accept that for some people it doesn't come natural. So you come back
Mm.
home to Zimbabwe, you want to get into things, but maybe in the capital Shoma, and you would like to sell, but maybe Nunyara, and for other people, they just have to go over it. But for me, I'm just sharing from a point of I've done this, and after
Mm.
coming back to Zimbabwe multiple times, and I know that people will say, ko angari kunze ko hana mari. But it's okay. Do what's working for you. It's your life, right? But I kind of want to really go through. Maybe you've already answered this when we talked earlier, but if you want to add anything more to what advice you give a man who's coming back from the diaspora, is feeling lost, ashamed, unsure of his next steps. And this could also apply to women, honestly. But like, yeah, for a man, and we say that because let's say it's a man who's coming with his family, he's feeling that role of I need to provide for my family, but now I'm back in a new context of, and some other people are feeling like this is your home, like you should, it's not new context, but it's kind of new because you've been
Mhm.
abroad now, and all of that. There's a lot of pressure. Do you have any thoughts on that? I know you kind of touched upon it a little bit earlier.
You see, I think you'd want to kind of do the same thing you did when you went out. Due diligence.
Okay.
When we are applying for these jobs and relocation,
Mm-hmm.
we literally try to understand the standards of living, kutobvunza, usaka ndoita sei, ndodidi, like you do homework.
Yeah.
I think if you spent even Muslim, unfortunately, even ukabuda 6 months, unogona kudzoka zvinhu zvachinja. But now things are a
Let me
little
tell
bit
you,
stable.
I was in Zim in September.
Uh-huh.
And then I came in March, so that could be a good 6 months. Ndakatoona kuti ako even mari yekushandisa kupinda mushikashika yachinja. I think it had been to
Yep.
engage. I'm like, what? Even like change, and then people, I was trying to understand currency. I'm like, what is happening? Yeah.
So, so it's like unotoda ka information pack kekudzoka kumba, but we don't do that because tiri kuti tiri kudzokera kumba, and when people are sharing vari kunoko, we can't relate because we think people are exaggerating zviri kuitika. But I think the first port for me inenge itongori pakuti due diligence, kunatsokutoita kunge uri kudzokera kune chinhu chausingatozivi, especially when it involves not only you. Uri one, I think you can, nogona ngwava and you make things happen. But there's always that crunch inozotevera when you have dependents, varipo, and they're coming in with a lifestyle yavasiya, and are not anticipating kuti inogona kungochinja over a flight. Yekuti after a flight atomuzim wautoona okay pamwe pa wifi ndichingobuda mukati ndichipinda mushopu hamuna wifi, hakuna chakadai, so magetsi akuenda and you don't have backup, mvura pamwe yaenda iri kureshenwa so that munhu wese akwane. These are just those things yekuti there's that frustration of ndofanira kubhajeta mvura. You're asking yourself, budget mvura, where is that coming from? But energy, yes, you would want, because when you buy which is out pamwedzi ndoshandisa chakadii. So that due diligence will guide you in kutunzwisise kutaura nevanhu kumba. Where are you really going? And
Mm,
are you going back into your old house if you had one? Uri kuenda
mm,
kumusha here kumba kwenyu if there are people still there and if it was well kept. If it wasn't well kept, be prepared kuti yakaita sei, prepare and try and prepare vanhu vese,
mm,
kuti vange vachizodai. So because some of the pressures dzinozowira the adult, uh, it's not necessarily from them because they might be okay. It might be from their offspring. Vana
mm,
vavo, vakutanga kufunga, "Ish, mwana wangu ndatomushaishira, ndatomuchinjira," and stuff like that.
mm,
Try and reconnect with a lot of people
mm,
before you even touch base.
mm,
Vamwe vanoda kuita move in silence, spectacular comeback, yeah? And then wosvika kusina, no one is expecting it. Hapana ari kugona kukujega because they don't really know what you have. In
mm,
being open, guys,
mm,
ndiri kudzoka, I'm coming back. Can I get a job? Ndiri kudai, so kunoku nguva yangu yapera, or handina kurenyuirwa
mm,
visa rangu. Just be open. Find a few people that you're open with
mm,
and who you feel can actually assist you and help you
mm,
set up.
yeah,
And don't be selective at times, huh?
mm,
Because patiri kuendako, this is so interesting, but patiri kuendako, we're not selective of the jobs that we're going for. Maybe
mm,
it's because of the securities that they offer kubasa. But kunoku munhu anogona kunzi asha hapana patori negraft rekuti unogona kutakura
mm,
mafirst because it's manual.
mm,
But you don't feel as if you will be able to do manual, and it's hard because nyango pandiri panapa ndikanzi there's manual work
mm,
inogona kundinetsa,
mm,
kuti ndiende kuadjusta. But try and link up and take up any job anywhere so that it gives you something that you can fall back on.
You know,
I
Mr.
think for
Samuel,
me,
I,
it's
I
yeah.
always say, mari kana ya muhomwe haina unyoronzwa, I wanna say. I mean, if it's
Yeah.
ethical, I'm gonna do it. Like
Mm.
when the money
Ah,
is in my pocket, it doesn't have a label to say, oh, she was cleaning the toilet or she was doing this or that. So yeah, why not do it in Zim if you do it abroad, you know?
it's like stigma will come,
Mm,
discrimination, exclusion is going to come.
mm,
It's part of life, and get to a point where people would see, I've come across a lot of motivational quotes, videos, and all. Shaka na munhu asiri for you. Uh, there's no problem in just letting them go. Cut them off. You
okay.
know, trees. Before they have these, they shed off.
Mm,
Those dead leaves.
mm,
Kuti akwanise kuramba ari in survival mode. I always look at banana plants.
mm,
So I do a lot of planting, gardening, like I mentioned. Banana plant kana risina mvura
mm,
rinotanga kudonha mashizha aro, mahomba acho, and they
mm,
turn brown, they go. But no maintainer that the one that is directly per stem. This
mm,
is the same thing. If you see good, there are a lot of people who are pulling you down. Yes, they might be close. Create, the buffer. Put
mm,
them somewhere. Iwewe, when you want to talk to them,
mm,
ndo paunoenda ikoko, because yeah, there's some energy that you don't need when you already have
mm.
low energy within yourself.
Oh yeah.
But vanhu ava hadi vanoda kungotakura nebhageji rese, hey, hama dzangu, mafesa angu, but they're weighing you down, and they are not saying the same wherever they are.
Mm,
They're actually the ones who are kodzazoka is not doing that.
mm,
So you need to be, I'm not saying be negative and go shun people, but you also need to protect yourself
yeah,
half the time.
yeah.
So yeah, that's the little in a mouthful that I can actually pick up for such.
Wow, that is so, so deep. So, so, so deep. Thank you. Um, and yeah, I'd like to ask more on entrepreneurship, money, and mental health. I know this is your specialty, entrepreneurship and money. And this is
Yeah,
very important for men because again, expected in the society to be providers, right? And
yeah.
I think for people who've gone abroad, there's always talk of how can I invest back home? Even to prepare, like you're saying, to prepare to come back home, softer landing. People are like you said, do your homework, find out
Mhm.
just the same research that you do for going to the US, any other country abroad. Do the same when you're coming back home, and months earlier, years earlier, right? So I kind of want
Mhm.
to ask questions, and at this point, because this is really your focus, your niche feel free to
Mm-hmm.
divert from what I ask, so long it's benefiting, what we're talking about. I want you to really be free. So I want to ask, men tend to tie their identity or sense of worth to financial success. And in your view, how does this affect their mental health? And how can someone really balance how they feel about their financial success and sense of worth and the power of yet? I was listening. I really like a royal, Meghan Markle, and she did this
Mm-hmm.
podcast where she talked about the power of yet. That
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we are thinking, oh, I'm not financially successful today, and you have so much mental health, stress from it. But it's just I'm not financially successful yet. You know, it's going to happen in the future, and I don't have to have
Mm-hmm.
stress for today. So, like your thoughts, like how can men balance, their own identity, mental health, but also you think about it in the context of men coming from the diaspora, women as well.
With financial success comes worthiness of any individual and ability to do stuff for male and also provide is what eventually it culminates to that. When you are able to provide, you are now one of the men who are successful. Anyone wishes something, you can get. And that failure to, get that, that's where it starts building up. When one doesn't fully meet their, expectations, their targets, they start crumbling, they start falling, and they start being unproductive
Mm,
because they are now concentrating on those setbacks instead of focusing on other things that they can actually create. How best can I then change? Maybe I even did my financial goal setting wrongly. I am looking at a long-term goal, but I put it on a short-term goal
mm,
based on what I'm getting. We tend to wing, if I could say, financial literacy.
mm,
We tend to say, because I've seen it, I've done it. I mean, I've heard about it. I am able to manage my money. I'm
mm,
able to manage the resources. It's as simple as when $1,000 comes into my pocket, $500, $100 or $10 comes into my pocket, I can use it.
mm,
Uh, Based on the needs and wants.
mm,
This is where we always even argue and say, after a week, record,
mm,
try and track what you've been doing.
mm,
Then put what you need and what you want, categorize that weekly total and
mm,
see how much you spent on the needs and how much you spent on the want.
mm,
And you actually see where some of your wastage is going and coming from.
mm,
And it is at that point that we tend to set our bars too high.
mhm,
We don't we tend to fall again into the societal expectations
mm,
and not our current situation.
mm,
You commit to, so for example, my kids will be going to school and they've got various trips, and I commit to that trip because I need to maintain the status
mm,
of myself and my child.
mm,
And I fail to do that. And then this is where the problems happen. I
mm,
think it is an easier setback to tell your child to say, you know what, for this particular trip, I'm sorry, I can't,
mm,
you can't go. But
mm,
it is the hardest reality to face that failure of not being able to provide
mm,
that gets us into
mm,
problems because now, because I don't want to be seen as a failure in my child's eye,
mm,
in the my children's friends' eyes, in
mm,
their parents' eyes, I then go and create um, debt. And
mm,
before we know it, we are over indebted and we are getting into these all different things. We are now losing respect from our peers,
mm,
because now you've even failed to pay what you had committed. Now you've exposed yourself that you can't. But
mm,
at times you might actually hide by saying, no, 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 my child is not going on this
mm,
trip. And people just think that it's a choice that you
mm,
would want not your
mm,
child to go to a particular trip.
mm,
But it's hard for people to own up to their particular current status. If I
mm,
could, if I could just go further and say, we just need to own up. and say,
Wow.
I don't have this, I have this. And then we need to understand that there is more to money than just transacting with a supplier, where you
Mm-hmm.
just, this thing is going for $10 and you use it for $10. But did you need it?
Mm.
Do you want it?
Mm.
Um, and do you know, and a lot of things. I can even touch on issues where we're saying in Zimbabwe, the startup or entrepreneur ecosystem
Mm.
is not that favorable. It's close to, it's there, but it's non-existent, if I could
Mm.
say.
Mm.
We've got a lot of trainings that go around entrepreneurship trainings, but we
Mm.
don't have uh takers of those alumni
Mm.
of people whom we are training in entrepreneurship,
Mm.
business plans, sprouting up their systems within the businesses. Yeah, then what? You've got a pool of entrepreneurs, but they're still there where they were. We're
Mm.
talking of unemployment issues, but when we're talking about unemployment, a friend of mine was talking, I even shared it at the regional summit where we're talking about the survivalist entrepreneur and the opportunistic entrepreneur. The
Mm.
survivalist is the bulk of the Zimbabwean.
Mm.
We are where we are working and trying to sell off things so that I'm able to pay rent. I'm
Mm.
not doing it so that I want to employ the next person.
Mm.
I'm literally focusing on my needs.
Mm.
So these people are not, this is why we are not growing that ecosystem such that we are reducing the gap of
Mm.
unemployed
Mm.
youth or
Mm.
qualified youth, but they're still not employed.
Mm.
This because the bulk of the entrepreneur here is the one that is, basically the survivalist. The opportunistic one is, somewhere there, and they might have gotten some assistance somewhere somehow. So
Mm.
when you're coming back into Zim, that issue of background checks is important. Zimbabwe needs there's a lot of potential in
Mm.
Zimbabwe for anything really.
Mm.
We don't want to lie.
Good market
There's
also.
it is a good market. Anything, Africa right now, we're talking of AI. Imagine
Mm.
if you start putting these things. But the challenge is some of these things are not yet um, they're not yet ready
Mm.
to
Mm.
be rolled out because policies and systems are not yet ready to even receive.
Mm.
Our systems as individuals are not even ready to start dealing with automated things, some things that have always been in other countries some 30, 50 years ago.
Mm.
We still are yet to acknowledge, how we can automate other things where we are still using just the basic of things. So anyone who's coming and they do their homework, they understand the agro system, any agro business value addition, you come up. So again, it talks about, do you even have access to that money? Because
Mm.
we're talking of we have we have abundant raw
Mm.
materials. We've got stuff that even if we go to any European country,
Mm.
those we can even satisfy them or not satisfy that market, but
Mm.
we still have the resources here.
Mm.
But we
Mm.
don't have people who are processing them so that they go out when they're already finished goods.
Mm.
Start thinking along those things. How can I start setting up a machine, a factory? Yet again, people would feel, afraid to come and set up their systems and
Mm.
invest heavily
Mm.
because they're not sure if in the next 2, 3 months those things do exist. Will the
Mm.
policy protect them? Because there's no policy that even protects. Or will the government wake up and just change the legislation and it's against the entrepreneur? So I would want to say a lot, but I wouldn't want to then say it is as easy as the discussion that we could have it. But there is a lot
Mm.
that involves that movement and coming back and setting up a business.
Right.
Try and even set it up whilst you haven't even come back,
Mm.
and try and visit. I have a friend.
Mm.
He left around 2024.
Mm.
He has been doing farming. He
Mm.
has gone to one of the European countries.
Mm.
He just came back to harvest his
Mm.
mealies, chibage.
Yeah. Mm.
And he was saying, no, now I want to. So what I'm working there, I'm putting back. So again, this talks volumes about the objective of him going
Mm.
and coming back.
Mm.
He has his millies, he's harvesting them, he's selling. He actually showed me that he had already started planting onions,
Mm,
and he was planting these onions on a piece of a 4 hectare piece of land, and he has I'm not sure, but I think 100,000 heads of cabbages.
mm,
So what he has already put down, but he's not saying his family is that side, but he's just coming here to see
mm,
how things are going and ensure that his those things are working out well. This is a different person,
mm,
1 in a million people. It's not
mm,
a story that one can replicate, adopt, and
mm,
use in their personal lives. It's a
mm,
different setup. But I'm just sharing how people just are going out for different reasons and still maintaining their presence in the country. But if you'd want to come back, I would want to say, ask people who are doing it, learn from it,
mm,
visit if it's possible,
mm,
get a trusted person. If you Because there are a lot of people who are even sending money to
mm,
set up projects. And
mm,
when it's time for them to come back, they see that there's nothing on the ground, but they're being shown different pictures and different stuff.
mm.
So it's hard.
Wow.
So yeah, I could go on and
Mm,
create a modular, but it comes so hard to realize that there's a lot of potential. But what I strongly feel right now, we have trainings that have gone and done. We
mm,
now need people to take up those trainings. We now need people who are not afraid to put in money on these startups, and it just goes. I was reading somewhere, there's a global youth participation index
mm,
where it speaks of how Zimbabwe is ranked at 60% in terms of having youth participation.
mm,
Like we are ranking well,
mm,
but in actual, so it goes on further to say, yes, there's a lot of youth involvement within different structures,
mhm,
but the young people are not the ones making the decisions. The
mm,
decisions are still being made for themselves.
mm,
So you're not sure how best we can now move to that 80%
mm,
where we are now talking of, yes, we are talking of real youth participation, which we do have. They're
mm,
in their structures, they're in their stuff, but they're
mm,
nowhere when it comes to saying, yes, this policy, no, that policy, changing things in, where it matters the most in favor of them. So this is the challenge that we haven't gotten, and this is where we will continue falling short. Like I said before, there are some issues that we discuss with young people that I was also fighting
mm,
to get changed when I was within the youth age bracket that are still topical. And
mm,
again, you then realize that there's some person who needs to then say, um, let's do this. Government has really done its part, but they
mm,
still have a lot to do
mm,
to make it meaningful
mm,
to the young person, so that that young person whom we're saying should
mm.
come back and really say, I can just transfer my business
Yes.
straight into what I want to go and do is in Zimbabwe,
Wow.
which then starts losing, revenue.
Wow, wow, wow. It has been really, really awesome having you, Mr. Tendai Carlton Saunyama. Ah, it has been awesome. Thank you so much for providing so many gems, so many rich, rich insights to help any young middle-aged male person, even females who want to come back to Zimbabwe from the diaspora and still really have good, balanced mental health when they come back. So we are so
Mm.
excited and super grateful for Education Matters that has brought this podcast from Zimbabwe Career Connect department. And we're really saying, as Zimbabwe Career Connect, we want to provide you all these resources to be able to have soft landing when you come back to Zimbabwe, be it support when it comes to entrepreneurship. We want to guide you through the processes, help you with the systems in Zimbabwe, be it looking for jobs, interviewing, looking for graduate training opportunities. We want to support you all the way. We also really want to provide the circle of supportive young Zimbabweans who are back home in Zimbabwe who can provide you that soft landing. So really wanting to ensure that you have good mental health when you make the decision to come back home, and that even when you're still in the diaspora and planning to come back home, that you have all the support necessary. Again, thank you so much, Mr. Tendai Carlton Saunyama. Really, really grateful. Maybe you just want to say bye to the audience. They're excited to have you.
Thank you so much for actually getting me to come and share and reach out to quite a broader